A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. So
it's a beautiful Monday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikele.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and welcome.
Okay, so yes, indeed, from Lagos to the rest of the world. Well, not just from Lagos to the rest of the world. As a matter of fact, you can fly almost from any part of the country now to the rest of the world and land in any parts of the world as well. I like to believe so.
Eventually.
Well, it's good to see that the Akanibiam International Airport has been opened after the back and forth. So, so they could look forward to getting from there. They could also do the same thing from Port Harcourt, from Lagos, from Abuja, from, as we continue taking steps to ensure that different parts of the country are opened up. Who knows, maybe, I think we should be optimistic. You never can tell. There could be a day where we'll now begin to refer ourselves as this economic zone, as that document indicated. And we'll all be happy for it, I reckon, because who doesn't like a flourishing economy, by the way? I mean, forget about what politicians will tell you about. No, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Those are political rhetorics, which they will always say when campaign time comes, as you may have witnessed. But anyway, we hope that becomes...
If I can just quickly follow up on that. Remember we had this conversation with the aviation minister and we were asking him, look, how do we ensure that these things are not just one-offs, that as soon as that kind of airport, there's a continuity of ensuring that we don't have to wait for a year. There's a maintenance structure in place. I'm talking about airports. Remember that the conjoined twins were moved from...
Equally good news.
Oh, yeah.
So it's good to start the Monday on such good notes as well. And it's happened again.
Oh, yeah. They were airlifted from Adamawa to Bios Estate. And, the good news is, yes, the separation happened as far back as January.
Yeah.
And, this is how many months after? 8-7 months after, and they're doing fine. I saw the babies, and for a Monday, he gave me. This was when the procedure was about to start. This was as far back as January, and this is not something that you find happening around a lot. In fact, this is one in thousands. This is a very rare case, really. And something the mother said caught my attention, saying that this separation and the successful separation has saved her from the tag of being a witch. Apparently, a lot of people in her area were calling her a witch because her children were conjoined. But the good news is that we've got capacity in Nigeria to do things like this. This is successful. This is, may I say, world-class, by the way. And I think it's time to build on it. I know COVID-19 made us pay some attention to our healthcare sector. But when you speak with professionals in the health sector, they keep telling you, well, it is not enough. It is not enough. So we have a long way to go. But, incidents like this give us that ray of hope that we can do so much with our health system.
Which is this story actually tells two stories for me. It says two things for me. On the one hand is the casting of the woman as a witch and all kinds of shades of opinions that we have in our part of the world that really do not represent the reality that people, have to go through. So we need to rejig the people's minds about such things so that we don't just have unnecessary cultural, traditional appellations to things that we do not understand simply because we do not understand it. The second one is the fact that this operation happened in Nigeria. Well, she had to be moved from one state to another. Well, gratifying. Perhaps just as Chamberlain said, we can begin to have specialties in areas, in certain specific areas of our nation. Okay, this hospital is good for this, that hospital is good for that. Maybe some specialization like that would actually help us to do better. But this is also a testament that these things are possible, not just because we have the equipment, but because we have the personnel. Now, imagine that we have the personnel and we do not have the equipment. Then that is a problem altogether. But if we have the equipment, as we have all the personnel spread all over the nation, I think it's about time we really begun to scale up our activities and our capacity as a nation.
I wonder why the father was never called a wizard, though. Why it's just a woman?
It's always a woman. Oh, sorry. Markwe.
Oh.
Well, yes, you can say that again. It's always the woman. Anyways, it's a sad one in that regard. But I'm very happy that, that tag, she's been able to shed it as a result of the hard work put in by our medical personnel. So kudos to all of them, and congratulations to the parents and to us all. I mean, because when we think about feats like this, we should actually give ourselves a pat on the back, and say, look, we can do what it is that we always go abroad to go and seek for. What's that song again? What is in waiting day for Sokoto, a day for Shokoto? That's basically what our issue is. We need to continue to find the things that we go abroad to go and seek for right here in our Shokoto, so to speak. So it is good to see. I think it's the second one we're seeing this year. One happened at the National Hospital at the beginning of the year. It took a while before the National Hospital eventually came out to say, hey, look, we had conjoined twins. I think it's not even joined by the chest. And, they separated them successfully, monitored them for about a month or two before they eventually brought them out to the public to say, we have successfully, separated these twins who were conjoined at this point. And it's a very good development. More and more, I think that we should actually have a segment for good news because more and more I get to, speak with people these days who say, oh, Malkwe, I've switched off the news, or I don't watch news anymore. I just, for my own mental health, I've had to switch off the news. And I think that's because a lot of the news is depressing. Every time you watch the news, there's no one problem here. It's not one thing that depresses you here. It's another problem. So sometimes people are dealing with they're dealing with enough of their own problems, not to now start thinking of more and more worries. And I think that the more we find things to cheer, the more we find things that will lift our spirits up, it's very important that we share them. And then even in so-called bad situations. So for instance, we heard over the weekend the sad passing of a very big actor, Chadwick Boseman, who died to colon cancer. And a lot of people were inspired by his story. The fact that, for 4 years he was battling that illness, but did not let that illness define him. He still found a way to contribute his quarter to the film industry and live out his dream. So in some ways, even when we have bad news, I think that there's always, a chance to find out something new and something good. And for those who have switched off, worrying about their mental health, don't worry, the news will not always be bad. I'm sure that even us who are in the industry are not always looking for bad news to share. I mean, that's not what we want. We certainly want to, highlight the good that is happening in the world. I think it was Dr. Christopher Olukolade who said, we good people are underrepresented in the news and we need to do more. We certainly are willing to do more to bring the good that is happening out there. It's not as much as we would like to see. And sometimes, so say good news doesn't really sell. But you'll be surprised. Maybe now there is a market for it in a world that is, enchanted with, bad news and things that are depressing people more and more. Perhaps right there is, you see more and more people leaning towards the good, people cheering on what is good. I think even that Chadwick Boseman tweet, for instance, which announced his passing, according to Twitter, was the most liked tweet, over the weekend. Not because people are happy that he died, but the manner in which his family announced it was so moving in such a way that, people had no option than to pour tribute to such a hero. So for me, I always try to look for the good in everything. Sometimes, yes, I lose my optimism, but generally, if you ask me, I think I'm still about 75% to 85% optimistic that the news, that there will always be something good to share in the news. When we see something bad, of course, we will certainly condemn it. But when we see something that is heart-lifting, that is heartwarming, we certainly will celebrate. And it was definitely good to also see at the airport in Enugu, Southeast governors and all the politicians there opening that airport. I look forward to what the developments, the economic development that airport, the opening of that airport will bring to Enugu and its environs. The fact that you can fly from anywhere in the world and land in the Southeast, I think that's certainly something to share. Let us see how that eventually impacts the economy of not just Enugu and the Southeast, but also of Nigeria. Gentlemen.
Yes, indeed, very much so. And then we're hoping that, maybe somebody could tell somebody that we shared some good news this morning, just so they know, just in case.
All right.
All right, and so we'll take a look at what the dailies have We don't have control over what they've written. So, but we'll read it. Let's start with Nigerian Tribune this morning. Look at the lead story here today. Water Resources Bill. Southern Middle Belt leaders go to court. So there you go. That's what's right here. This country has lived in peace for several years with its land vested in the governors through the Land Use Act, which is part of the Constitution. So that's excerpts of at least part of the story, which if you like to read it, this may perhaps spur you on to wanting to get a lot more details other than what you find on the front page as to why they are going to court. And then above this one, poultry farmers lament continuous ban on forex for maize importation. Say shortage causing underfeeding of birds, low egg production. FG plans to inject 600 billion naira into agriculture for food security. Okay, so we're hoping that once that, well, I mean, it's good for people to know the food chain, I beg your pardon, the value chain, the cycle. So in case, some persons want to
step in,
get into one of those, value chains, you never know.
And I think that explains why my eggs have been smaller. I noticed past two, sets now, they've been smaller, so maybe just...
Okay, that's if it's having immediate impact already. So there you go. They've got several other stories on the front page here, but we'll let you see the rest yourself.
Well, let's take a look at The Guardian for you this morning. The big story. Panic sale weighs on dollar as BDC window reopens. Well, it depends on how you see that. Is that good news or bad news? We'll take a look at the riders. CBN vows to ensure exchange rate stability. Sustained rebound with external reserves, experts urge. That story starts on the front page, continues on page 6. So much talk about the dollar these days. And, it's not for everybody really, but when you get to the market, you realize everybody's latching onto it. You want to buy Gary, you hear the dollar has gone up. So, you might want to pick up The Guardian to understand why.
Dollar and Gary.
I know, right? Okay. But the big picture on the front page shows the Minister of Aviation arriving in Enugu for the reopening of the Akano Ibiam International Airport. Hearing Mark West speak this morning, I'm weighing all the stories, good news or bad news. But this one is certainly a good one. And you see this right under that.
Your scale will last only a moment.
I know, right? Unusual August break puts crops at risk. Farmers lament as NIMET's rainfall forecast fails. Oh yeah, we had this forecast, days of rains, but it appears as though we're waiting to see those rains. And say experts warn of food shortage, recommend irrigation insurance. Continues on page 6. A couple of other stories. Bayelsa gunmen kill councillor as first Siamese twins undergo successful surgery. You see that mix of good and bad news there, page 42. A couple of other stories really on the front page of The Guardian. We'll let you do the picking this morning.
New Telegraph has, good news or bad news, I don't know. Nigeria-Ghana face-off worsens as Ghana justifies actions against Nigerian. Stories on page 3. Minister, we deported 700 for criminal activities. That quote on the front page is by the Ghanaian Minister of Information and Kojo Nkrumah. You may want to find out the details of what that is saying. And that story, that picture there is of the airport being opened. And Buhari reopens Enugu Airport, says aerodrome will be concessioned. That story is on page 27. There will be violence in Edo Ondo polls, says IGP. It also says politicians arming thugs and CPs to rejig operations. That story is on page 7 of the New Telegraph, this morning. Above the nameplate, LCCI says businesses 80% supply chain face disruption, asks CBN to reverse new policy on Form M. That Form M is becoming a star actor, so to speak.
Major one, M for major.
Well, maybe something like that. Well, the details are right there in the New Telegraph this morning. Mark?
Leadership is the next one here. They have a number of very interesting stories right on the front page. NAS, Northern Elders disagree over constitution review. Yes, that was also big on the news. Channel funds into tackling insecurity, poverty. That's according to Northern Elders Forum. Oh, they say it's going to be a major waste of time to undertake another constitution review. But lawmakers say amendment a continuous process. That's what they have to say. It's on page 4 of the paper this morning. You might want to read details. Ghana moves to stave off diplomatic row with Nigeria. That's also there. Denies maltreatment of Nigerians. Akufo-Addo to engage PMB on crisis resolution. But that's what we want. We don't want a conflict. What we want is crisis resolution. And if you look at the bottom there, Zamfara governor seeks death penalty for reckless driving. It's almost a bill I'll support. I mean, if they were to bring it round and have the vote of all Nigerians on it, I certainly will give it my vote because, I mean, the kind of things that we see on the road these days, it does cause for worry. I mean, there are rules for driving on the road, for God's sake. When you endanger other people's lives or you cause an accident and people die, maybe you deserve nothing less than death as well. And looking just on top of the lead headline there, job loss looms as NAS reviews Labour Act. Are they reviewing it so that people can lose jobs? You might want to read that story on page 4 of the paper, but let's leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Well, take a look at Vanguard next. Nigeria will break if we release NDDC looters list. Ojugbo. What, you want to say, please release it?
No.
What?
So there are so many things that could make Nigeria break now. You remember?
We don't know. He just says it will break. So I wonder what is in this list.
Oh, wait, so they are looters, right? Mm-hmm. People actually looted. Mm-hmm. That's a fact.
That's what he's saying.
Okay.
So
and we know that people looted.
I just wanted to get the facts right.
So does that then mean that he might have withheld information at some point?
Or be withholding information.
So should they go ahead and release this list?
I'm not sure.
All in favor, say aye.
Is this the national? I can't see the mace. I can't see the
But
mace.
really, we need to start saying these things. If we say that...
But what will happen if we release this list?
He just told you Nigeria will break.
Some
That's what
people
he
said
said.
that if anything happened to Chief MKO Abiola in 1993, 94, 95,
So you're saying Nigeria will not break?
Did Nigeria break? No, that's the worst that could have happened.
So that means, look, Mr.
Let them
Ojugbo,
release this thing. Look, enough of naming and shaming. Let's not just name and shame. Let's punish and deter others from doing the same.
okay, so...
This is a teaser. It sounds like a teaser, really.
Okay, well, let me read the writers and see if that helps. Accuses NAS of being terrified by forensic audit. Says, NAS using budget to blackmail committee. Forensic audit triggered NAS interest. Adds 51 million naira monthly interest to MD's office, not personal money. And then Falana, 38 CSOs kick against suspension of legislative oversight by Gbajabiamila.
Did you notice a trend in the writers? There's been some consistency.
And there's another word too.
Yeah.
NAS. You
legislative.
see audits. So, but there's a forensic audit which is ordered by the president. Yeah. So does that mean Nigeria will break if they finish that audit? Because perhaps that audit might as well
compel the same list. Because if we compare reports of the Auditor General with that of the forensic audit.
Look, the law is the law. If anybody is found guilty, let them face the law.
So let them release this list, please.
Are they saying if you enforce the law, Nigeria will break? Okay, look, I don't know. That's what you see on the front page here. And then speaking about, look at this on the bottom street. Polls. Police uncover influx of arms thugs into Edo, Ondo. So you see this time and again in different elections and things happen, and yet the country doesn't break. And so, just as you were talking about one election that people thought Nigeria would break, but that didn't happen. So who knows what next now? So there's a bit of business here as well. Don't forget to check that out. Let me go to the back page at least. Nothing.
Some good
Teams can only lose. They can't break. Well, look at Vanguard Sport. Osimhen not under pressure, as ascribed to the agent. Messi tells Guardiola, I want to win Ballon d'Ors at City. Not one, this is a plural now. He said he wants to win a city.
That'll be a record, though. Messi's 33.
But then Messi cannot leave on a free transfer. La Liga. Only 700 million euros can free him.
That's almost a
What
billion.
an entanglement there. But who knows what happens at the end of the day. So that's Vanguard today.
Well, the Daily Trust tries to break down what they might call an impending crisis, really, in the food market. You see foreigners manipulating flour market in Nigeria. Farmers decry exploitation, price hike. Wheat importation threatens local production. Bakers on strike in Borno. Price increase in Kano, Abuja. We'll address the issue. That's coming from Consumers Commission. You understand how important flour is to Nigeria. Bread. So it's a lot. And then there's
Flour,
a breakdown.
bread, and the other things.
We talked about the food chain earlier. This is part of it.
Oh, yeah.
And if we got this right, imagine how many jobs will be created or saved.
But what is of a major concern is foreigners manipulating flour market. That's shocking. But then the Daily Trust tries to break
Is that
it down.
possible without the connivance of some of us?
Big questions, really. Some of us, I don't know about me, but but right on top of that, you see Northern Elders reject 1 billion naira constitution review. You see APC stalwarts came for national chairmanship on the posts, and NDE takes 100% control of 774,000 jobs. It's coming from the DG. So is that an end to that controversy? Find out on page 23 of a Daily Trust.
And News Direct says alleged 5.47 billion naira COVID-19 scandal. ICPC quizzes NDDC directors, other officials. Stories on page 3. And of course, a number of other stories you'll find right there on the front page of the paper. Under the picture there, Dangote fertilizer crucial to government, agricultural agenda, minister, and the story is on page 3. CBN to sell $20,000 weekly to BDCs. That's according to APCON president. Stories on page 14. Does that mean that's all that's going to be going out as far as that is concerned? That's the News Direct this morning.
Yeah, and that ends a look at some of the dailies here today. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
The signing of the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020 into law by President Muhammadu Buhari on August the 7th, 2020 is supposed to herald Nigeria's most significant business legislation after 3 decades. Some provisions in the new CAMA 2020 have caused a debate, despite the federal government's narrative that the act will promote ease of doing business and reduce regulatory hurdles.
In the ease of doing business in the world.
One government agency at the forefront of the new act is the Corporate Affairs Commission, which has been given details and explanations to concerned clauses.
The powers under CAMA are not even as extensive as what we have under the Charges Act. So this is my explanation for this. It's not targeted at any particular group, but our laws have to be consistent with best practice. And as I have said, individuals, associations have a right to register or not to register. If you don't want to operate in line with CAMA, then don't register. Deal with your members as an individual.
Under the new act, the section states that religious bodies and charity organizations will now be strictly regulated by the Registrar General of the Corporate Affairs Commission and the Supervising Minister. Section 839 states that the Commission can suspend the trustees of an association and appoint an interim manager to run the affairs. But the Christian Association of Nigeria has rejected the act, describing it as unacceptable, urging the federal government to stop the implementation of the law until the religious institutions are exempted from it. However, the new CAMA has other reforms that will tone down regulatory hurdles for businesses and associations. But with the issues raised so far, questions are, what will be the next line of action from the federal government amid the controversies trailing the new CAMA Act?
What can be done is that whatever the proposals for amendment may be, whatever the views of the church leadership may be, regarding the question of how the trustees and where there are interim trustees or whatever can be managed, that should be put into proposals that can be brought before the National Assembly, before the National Assembly leadership, for consideration of amendments to the law. That is a process which is entirely open. And I believe that that's a process that ought to be pursued.
Welcome back. Mr. Femi Atoyebi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joins us to weigh in on this CAMA 2020 controversy. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, this that has been signed into law by the president received with mixed feelings. The business community are commending it, saying about time, but you also do have religious bodies who citing Section 839 saying, wait a minute, no way, this has got to be expunged from it. So do you think the mixed reactions are justified?
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me this morning. It's my pleasure coming on your show. Now, to your question, I think it's a welcome development, the CAMA 2020, from the perspective of the businessmen and I think professionals. I think it's a welcome development. It's long overdue. So I would say from that perspective, it's welcome. From the perspective of the church, which I understand watching you in the last few minutes, as well as reading the various comments in the social media, it does appear that a section of the church, and I stress that, a section, seems to have a problem with it. I am not exactly sure what the problem is. I know they are calling, from what you said, for a total suspension insofar as it concerns the church. But with the greatest respect to those who are making that call, I can't find the justification for it. There is no way, and there's nowhere in the world where there is law and order, that a section of the society, whether be it church, a mosque, or whatever, will be exempted from the law. I haven't found that. I would personally not subscribe to it.
Well, it would be very interesting to know what your perspective is exactly about the specific provisions of that law, because for those who are even talking for now, it seems like it's only conversations as far as it concerns the church. Is it only about the church?
Well, thank you very much again. That's the precise point I just made now. If you look at the provisions of CAMA, particularly from Section 823 to 839, CAMA 2020, provisions have been made for not-for-profit organizations. Some will probably call that as well NGO. It does mention classes that belong to that group. It says religious, academic, scientific, customs. Like if a club comes together, like a Ikoyi club and all of that, and they choose to register. And of course, it does mention religious bodies. But nowhere in that act was the church mentioned. No specific religious organization was mentioned. And so that's why I'm personally struggling with the objections by the church. It cannot be about the church alone. Of course, I do have my comments on the law itself, but to just simply sweep it aside and said the church should be exempted, I'm so sorry. I can't support that.
You know, you started by saying that, well, it wouldn't be fair to just, for the sake of a section of a society, now, repeal the law or say that, well, the law will not count when it comes to them. But interestingly, in that same act, it gives a provision that 1/5 especially in that section that has been quite controversial, that 1/5 of an organization, can protest in court and, raise issues. In fact, maybe go to court, or maybe it will be the CAC that will go to court. Basically, also looking out for the minority in court. So, well, in the spirit of that law, it says, listen to the minority. And interestingly, it's not just a section of the church. I recall that SERAP also had issues with this law, for non-governmental organizations. And the challenge for them is, this law seems too strong in terms of, the leadership of those organizations. They say that some areas are vague, and they think that the government should not have that much authority in those organizations. So it's not just a section of the church, as it seems.
There are two distinct issues here. The argument of the leadership, or rather a section of the church, that is against the provisions of certain sections, particularly section 839, with reference to the powers conferred on the Registrar General. That's one aspect of it. There is the other aspect of the need for every organization, including the church, to be regulated. There are two different things. I seem to have a problem if anybody is arguing that the church shouldn't be regulated. But I do agree with them that from section 839 of CAMA 2020, it does appear that so much power has been conferred on the Registrar General to intervene in certain circumstances. I do agree with that. And so what I will expect any organization that is not particularly happy with the law as it stands is to approach the National Assembly and express its concerns as to the extent of the powers granted to the RG, Registrar General, and not to just say, sorry, we're not going to be regulated. So those are two different things, and I think they run in parallel. We must have regulation, but we must do it in such a way that someone will not wake up in the morning and decide that he wants to deal with any particular association, church, mosque, or some other organization that doesn't seem to be happy with. There is quite a good argument in that. I think the section is widely drafted, and I think we need to for this.
It's okay. We'll just allow you set up and, well, you could respond to this because the PFN, and I recall that you've worked with the PFN. So, there are two issues here. So you say that they should come up with all those issues and present them. But I recall that you once said that once a law is put in motion, it will be very difficult to repeal it. But then the issue about the public hearing, let's begin from there, because the PFN said, well, they raised some of these issues and they were not really dealt with.
All right. I'm not, if you were referring to the paper that I did last week, I didn't speak about repealing now. I'm saying an amendment, not a repeal. Why would you repeal a law because a fraction of the society doesn't think it's good for them? Can you imagine if everybody raises an objection to one law or the other? Are we going to have laws in the country? So I was talking of, if they're asking for a repeal, I don't think it will happen. If they're asking for an amendment, I'm with them on that point in such a way that their fears would be allayed as to any misuse of the power conferred on the Registrar General or the Commission at large. So there are two different things between a repeal and an amendment. So I hope I have made that point clear. And as far as it concerns the public hearing, I'm hearing for the first time that they made presentation. So if they did, I think it's good at this point to put it out there to show people what their position was and why they thought government would abandon or jettison it. As far as the commentaries that I have received or I've read in the public domain is concerned, I don't think CAN or PFN made a formal presentation at the public hearing.
Because, I mean, part of what they were saying is, okay, perhaps let's even listen to another group that I also think that they do have a challenge with this CAMA 2020 Act.
I think the government should step down the execution of this of this act for now. It should be stepped down. I think the stakeholders should be brought to the table, and for the gray areas of it to be well defined so that trust can be built between the church and the government. Once that is done and the government understands clearly what the government is, the church rather understands what the government wants to do to make sure that this is not about control. If it's regulation, that is fine, you know, and yes, the churches need to be regulated. I agree with that. The churches need to make some adjustments. Yes, but they can sit down at the table, and this is not something that this is a matter of spirituality. It's not something somebody is just going to come and bring an act and say they want to control the church. It will not work.
So from what they say there's mutual suspicion, and they think that the intendment of the drafters is a bit suspicious.
Well, not even the devil knows a man's intention, they say. So I'm not able to speak to what the intentions of government or the National Assembly is. As I've said before, I am a Christian and I'm a minister, and I will not stand and watch doing nothing if government decided to do such things. And I know it's not going to happen overnight if ever it is, if it's being planned at all. But that there is mistrust between both sides, maybe. But like the speaker you just showed the clips of, he's not talking, he made a good distinction between control and regulation. I will also not subscribe to government controlling any institution, not just the church, but particularly the church. I'll be averse to that. But I don't see control here. What I see is regulation. Again and again, I will repeat, there is concern for the sweeping provision of the powers conferred on the RG, and it needs to be revisited. But I honestly don't see why we should suspend it. This can be done immediately. We can make presentation right now, but I will always say, when you condemn a particular act of someone or a law, don't just condemn it. Come up with an alternative, something that you think is workable for both parties. So let those who are opposed to what it is right now come up with something they think will work and will be acceptable to government as well. As I said, I mean, what the gentleman who last spoke is saying is that we should now sit down and look at it together. That was the purpose of the public hearing. But I'm not going to say shut them out. No, we cannot shut them out. They have serious and genuine concerns. Let's sit down. In the meantime, before the Registrar General can do anything, you must have been you must have run foul of the provisions of the preceding subsection. If you do the right thing for now and you propose amendments to the relevant sections, which I support, I don't see any problem here. Most of at least the leaders that I know in the PFN are men of integrity, men of probity, and I don't think they will have problem with regulation. Control, they will, and I will. But regulation, as long as it is open, it is fair, I support it, and I think they will also support it.
Yeah, because I mean, I've not heard any one of them kick against the provisions concerning the business community. So they, from that, means that seems okay for them, including the churches as well. But I think the provisions of those sections 839 moving forward are where the challenges are. So maybe use of words when they say condemn the entire thing might have been because of their displeasure over those sections, provisions of sections 839 going forward. But then some of those who have also spoken, their comments are also out there, they just wonder, they think that the government seems to be copying the UK Charity Commission where they have to do with regulation of NGOs, and that is completely different in terms of the role that government plays there, completely different from here. In fact, they went on thinking that this is just a clear tactical maneuver to entrench the NGO regulation bill through the back door, which had been rejected previously.
Well, again, that's their argument. And honestly speaking, I wouldn't know the intention of government because I'm not in government or part of government. But again, we must start always from the point of regulation. In the paper that I wrote, I had suggested that the church ought to have been self-regulating before. And pardon me if you don't mind, I could refer to a scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 31. It says, Paul says to the church, judge so that you may not be judged. So if we were doing some things or all the things we were supposed to do right as a body, I don't think we'll be where we're at. But there's been a lot of issues in social media, people making noise, even insulting men of God because they don't even know the facts. It's because we expose ourselves. We simply need to just do the right thing and then move simultaneously with the amendment of the section. In answer to your question on the comparison between the UK Charity Act, Charity Commission, Act, and this one, they are completely different provisions. In the UK Act, it's much more detailed, and there are a lot of safeguards that are in there. Besides, in the UK, there is, and I say this with all due respect to our people and our fellow Nigerians, there is a lot of maturity by public officials in the UK in the implementation of any law. And because they have good supervision, it's difficult for them to use the law to oppress an individual or group of people. And so to that extent, theirs is much, much, much better than ours. We have cases of abuses of power using one law or the other. It's not just the CAMA. Any law can be used to oppress your opponent if you have a bad leader or whoever it is the leader operating the particular law. So that's quite possible. But that is not the answer to saying jettison the law altogether. That's why I suggested, and I'm fully for an amendment, and we can get a lot from the UK and other jurisdictions as to how to ensure that in the implementation of CAMA, the RG or whoever stands in that office or the commission cannot use it arbitrarily. That I am 100% for.
Well, Markwell has some questions for you as well. Markwell, go ahead.
It would seem then that you are, very concerned about the concerns that the PFN and CAMA, most especially, has, they've raised with this particular matter, the issue of trust. Because for some people, they say underlying this all is that issue of trust. They claim that there is a breakdown of trust between church officials, even the NGOs. So, for instance, we were also seeing Serap complain about this law, threatening that if it's not reversed, they will go to court in 30 days or thereabout. The presidency has responded to say the place you should go to complain about that is the National Assembly. So that issue of trust, how best do you think it could be addressed?
Excuse me. Thank you very much. Apparently, there is mutual distrust, if you like, between the parties. That's the leadership of the church and the government on the law. And obviously, I'm not qualified to speak to that because I don't sit with the leadership, so I don't know what the mistrust is all about. But there is one from the exchanges of both parties, clearly. Now that we established that there is mistrust between both parties, there is no other way than to do it by dialogue. We just need to sit down. The leadership of the church should appoint a group of leaders representing them, maybe their lawyers, and then government and its lawyers, the National Assembly and its lawyers, where all the parties can lay their cards on the table and discuss it. And hoping that government will also see reasons with them where they have the concerns and do something about it. It's the only way. You just have to go to the table to discuss. Well, perhaps when it comes to the amendment of the law, it will be more of the National Assembly, because presidency, as I know the law to be, under a presidential system, cannot amend it. It has to be the National Assembly. But I'm sure if government also sees reasons with the leadership of the church, they can probably also sit down with them to say, how can we resolve this? If indeed no hidden agenda is planned.
So would you say that if we're to go by the response that government has given SERAP so far, would you say that they seem inclined to take a second look at the law that has already been signed by the president?
Is that question by the National Assembly or by the presidency? Sorry, I'm not sure I got that question.
So
who would be prepared to take a second look?
Exactly. So that's where the issue is now, because all three arms of government will certainly claim, will claim that they're acting within their powers, and who precisely should they be addressing this to? I'm hammering more on what SERAP has said, because there seems to be one organization that has addressed a specific arm of government. They have said, Mr. President, take back your assent, otherwise we go to court. Mr. President or the presidency has responded saying, no, well, you're addressing the wrong body. We think you should go to the National Assembly. So now that you have said that, all the lawyers of the different arms of government should come to table, I'm asking, do you see that inclination going by the response that the presidency has given to an organization like SERAP?
Now, once a president under a presidential system assents to a law, I don't think he can withdraw his assent. He cannot. The law can only be repealed or amended, in which case, if you have appropriate conditions for either, but that has to be made to the National Assembly. The president cannot withdraw his assent. He cannot. As far as I'm aware, under the law, he cannot. But my earlier suggestion is for them to sit together. This is, if you like, doctrine of necessity, if you like, so that there will be peace. The three parties can sit together. But in terms of who does what, is the National Assembly. They made the law. They can amend it. Don't forget that the CAMA has always been in existence. It was just amended by the National Assembly. So they can always amend it. And that amendment can mean we're taking out section X or Y and we're replacing it with section Z, whatever it is. But the presidency cannot, under the law, as I understand it. But if the president, yes.
In other words, the people that, whoever is aggrieved should be addressing their complaints to should be members of the National Assembly. Do I get you correctly?
That is my view. That is my view.
There's a section, there's something that you quoted earlier, Mr. Toyebi, that I thought, needed a little more. I think there may be a need for some elucidation. Well, you said that the powers of the Registrar General are so much, but I don't know how really powerful he is, especially as far as Section 839 goes, because there is nothing the commission can do to suspend the trustees of an NGO without the court. The first line says the commission may by order, and that order, according to subsection 2, will come from the court. And if the court does not agree that the commission should suspend the trustees, is it possible for the commission to go ahead?
That is a problem with the drafting. I'm trying to open to it, but my recollection of Section 839, which empowers the RG to suspend, I think with the greatest respect to the drafters, is a little bit inelegant and it's ambiguous. There is a section that says, that's a part of it that says it needs to go to court. But there is a subsection, I think the earlier one, doesn't seem to be quite clear as to whether he exercises certain powers on his own or with reference to the court. It is not clear. And if if it becomes a legal issue, my understanding is it can go either way. In other words, he might first exercise that power and then goes to court for certain other consequential reliefs. So I do not think, somebody will read it and say exactly what you said, which is you can't do this except to go to court. But even if he's going to go to court, he's going to do it ex parte. He's going to do it behind the back of the church or whatever organization he wants to deal with. So really, does it really make a lot of difference whether it is in his power alone or in conjunction with the court? It's still ex parte. So it's still open to an abuse, except certain conditions have been laid before, much more deeper or rather wider than we have before he can exercise that power. I think that's where the fear or concern is, and I cannot but agree more with that concern.
Another concern, really, another concern is the interim manager or manager's part. And the question for a lot of people is, does the law specify where they can be drawn from, or someone from anywhere can actually be appointed as an interim manager, or in another case, managers?
Well, again, that's one of the areas that I said is a bit opaque, if you like. The law hasn't stated who it would be. I think probably for qualification, but whether it could be someone who doesn't come from that constituency. For instance, if you were going to suspend the trustees of a church and appoint an interim manager, first of all, the manager, whoever it may be, would be overseeing the administration, nothing spiritual. The administration, the finance, whilst whatever is going on in court or wherever, not the spiritual. And to that extent, of course, if you find someone who is an antagonist to the faith, that could cause a lot of trouble. I agree entirely. So that is an area that we must look at with a view to strengthening the institution so that we don't bring someone who's already nursing a grudge against that particular association or organization to come and act as an interim manager. And within the period that he acts, it can destroy the whole thing. So there is concern, there is genuine concern in that area. We need to specify the qualifications, including whether they should be part of the constituency. When I say constituency, I'm not saying if you were taking action against Church A, that the manager should come from Church A. No. I'm not saying that. But let's get someone who's known to be an antagonist to the church.
All right, then. Several other sections, including 8422 as well, but we can't go into that today. But we do thank you for talking to us this morning, Mr. Femi Atoyebi, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We're back in a moment. Please stay with us.
in Agbede on Friday, which is on Thursday, which is actually the local government or the community of the deputy governor candidate of APC. Our people in the residence of one of our leaders, Ja Usman, were attacked viciously in his compound, not on the streets now, in his compound. 11 armed men broke in and started shooting sporadically into this place, destroying vehicles and wounding about 10 people that were rushed to the hospital. The APC, a few weeks ago, commissioned a reputable polling company to do an opinion poll on how the results will swing in Edo State. That result, as soon as they received it, has caused a lot of chaos in their system, because the result was clear that PDP won in at least 16 local governments. The consequence of this is that they are now desperate to have the election actually postponed, hence the increase in their violent attack.
We have said over and over that the PDP is busy chasing shadows. First of all, I'm sure you are aware that Malam Gani Audu is from Agbede. So obviously Agbede is a no-go area for the PDP. Knowing that, they have now tried to cast a slur on the very successful outing we had in Agbede. Let me debunk it. There was no incident of violence in Agbede. There is no way we could have been shooting at ourselves, is there? Whether Ososo, whether Agbede, we were the ones organizing a campaign. So if PDP claims that there were incidents of violence, I challenge them to publicly display their victims, put them out into the media space to say these are the people that were shot out by APC. Of course, it is not true. I am debunking it, nothing like that. APC, we have consistently preached against violence in these campaigns because we said we have a simple agenda that we are marketing. And so being an issue-based campaign, we have no reason to engage in violence.
Welcome back. Well, yes, we are turning our attention to Edo politics. Well, as a matter of fact, the IGP also yesterday did read the Riot Act, saying that, politicians have been arming thugs, and then he directed that they rejig the commissioners of police in Edo and Ondo states rejig the security architecture, and then he has told, look, he will not accept any such thing. So we're going to go ahead now to discuss this matter. Don Ogbeje, APC leader in Edo State, and then we're also supposed to have John Yakubu, the chairman, Esan North Campaign Council of the PDP. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the program. Okay, do we have Mr. Dan Ogbeje now? All right, let's move on to Mr. John Yakubu then. Good morning, Mr. Yakubu. Are you there? Can we see you if you're there? Okay, yes, indeed. So, all right, so you heard the APC talking about, that they think that the PDP were fabricating those allegations in Agbede, challenging your party to show evidence of any such attack, because they say that is their own strong area.
Well, it's unfortunate that the APC, as led by the spokesman, talk the way he's talking. And anytime on the program like this, we're actually speaking to Edo people and not to ourselves. Chamberlain, you cannot have a party division in an organization, in a democratic organization, and expect peaceful election from those set of people. You cannot have an infantry division armed by the leadership of that party. And I keep telling you, play back your videos, play back your news, and you realize that the infantry division of APC was set up by Andan Soshomole, and you keep referring to them as infantry. Like I keep saying, do you have an infantry division in an association without arming them? If you have an armed an infantry division in the APC, we are pleading with Andan Soshomole to dismantle them so that we can have a peaceful election in the Edo State. You cannot have lions and tigers in a democratic setting and have a peaceful election. And you know, and Edo people, like I said at the beginning of this program, we're speaking to Edo people. They came out publicly to tell Edo people that they have lions and tigers in the 18 local government. And when they gathered in Benin, they were instructed on what to do.
Apologies, I missed the first part of what you were saying. I couldn't hear it. I don't know if the viewers did. So could you tell me, I mean, I didn't get that part. Did you speak to what they said about you showing evidence that that attack didn't happen and you didn't fabricate it?
Division of APC. It is not John Evaton and Yakubu that is saying it. The infantry division, as claimed by the former national chairman, was set up by himself. And we want to appeal to them. Edo people are ready for a peaceful election. Let me repeat it. Edo and His Excellency Godwin Obaseki is actually not contesting with APC. You know that. He's contesting with a section of APC, that is the EPM. And what do we have in Edo State today? Because they have come to realize that EPM, a section of the APC, really cannot contest an election with Godwin Obaseki. That's the reason you are seeing all this kind of atrocity as committed by APC members. I want to appeal to APC members. If you have the vote, if you believe that you will win this election, please let it be peaceful. But one thing, the first thing we must do, the first thing IG must do, like the DSS did, is to identify who these lions and tigers are. We cannot allow them to go loose on the street of Edo and allow them to roam the street of Edo and lions and tigers.
Mr. Yakubu, just hang on a minute, because I'm not sure you answered the question directly. But Mr. Dan Ugbeje also joins us. He's a chieftain of the APC. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, so, good morning.
About the violence that is said to have occurred, of which the PDP is accusing your party. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it is very funny because, many times in the past, the PDP has been referred to as nest of killers. And it is very clear that they knew that they had only to campaign with in this election. So they were set from the very beginning, even before Godwin Obaseki decamped to the PDP in June, they were set from the beginning to unleash violence on Edo people to, obscure the real wishes and aspirations of Edo people. You remember that Godwin Obaseki went to Port Harcourt, River State, to pledge allegiance to the governor of River State. And we all know the history of political violence in that state. So
that is not the question. I ask you pointedly, what can you tell us about the violence that is said to have occurred in Agbede?
The deputy governorship candidate of the APC is actually from Agbede. So if he's from Agbede and the Agbede people accept him, the monarch accepts him, will he unleash violence on his own people? Of course, apparently, Agbede is in Isako West, local government of the state, and Philip Shaibu, the deputy governor of Edo State, is from that state. What they did was to disturb our rally at Agbede, and they brought in thugs that they be preparing to unleash on Agbede people to cause fear against them. You will know that the deputy governor of Edo State has a history of violence. In 2016, precisely September 29th, I saw him on channels where the ANEC representative for Isako West complained bitterly that the deputy governor, then the deputy governor candidate of the APC then, put a gun on him and threatened to shoot him if he did not accept the result that he brought from his ward and his unit. So he has a history of violence.
Okay, Mr. Ogbege, I don't know if anybody's got a history of violence, but who do you say brought in talks? And are you referring to any authentication by the police authorities or any security agencies?
No, from what we can see, because the talks, you remember when the deputy governor candidate of the APC went to his own community, Agbede. They brought in some miscreants who disturbed him. Of course, because of his respect for Edo people and the rule of law, he did not even mind them. He went about his business. Then on the day of this particular rally at Agbede, they all came again and they started shooting sporadically to scare the people of Agbede. And they're actually giving a warning that on election day,
Day of whose rally? Which rally? Which party was holding a rally when the shooting happened?
APC was holding a rally, and the PDP brought in talks to disturb the rally.
Okay. Mr. Yakubu, is that the case?
It's laughable that PDP members would now be shooting themselves when the PC have their rally in Agbede. I mean, it's stupid for any person to believe that PDP members will turn guns against their members in Agbede. But let me tell you, like I did mention just now, Chamberlain, don't forget that with the SS infantry we have in Edo State, in 2019, some of those members of this infantry division were exported to Akwa Ibom. And they were arrested. You can go back to your archive. And when they were arrested, they mentioned their leaders as Adams Oshomole and Tony Kabaka. I'm not just talking to myself or to you. We are talking to Edo people. And when our children were arrested on their way to Akwa Ibom, they reported back that they were recruited and sent by Kabaka and Adams Oshomole. So when you have an armory, you have a reservoir of this infantry in the Edo State. What we are saying is to plead with the IG of the Nigeria Police. Please come. You cannot be shooting yourself and be reporting yourself like Ogbede is saying. That is, that is nonsensical. How do you shoot yourself and you are reporting yourself? What we are saying and what we have, I've been saying this, that the infantry division in APC, as claimed by the former national chairman, they are armed by Adams Oshomole. We know them, and we know the leader of that infantry division. You remember in 2019 when they were arrested in Akwa Ibom.
Just one moment, Mr. Yakubu. Mr. Yakubu, just one moment. If you know these people, you have been able to identify them. Have you reported them to the police?
I'm sure that you know that the DSS last week here invited about 8 of them, the leadership of the infantry division of APC in Edo State. And they've been invited. And one of their leaders boasted not too long ago that yes, they've been invited, but they've been asked to go home. I want to plead here, and I want to appeal to Edo people. I want to appeal to you so that the DSS can re-invite these persons and please withdraw the arms and ammunition from them so that we can have a peaceful Edo.
Mr. Yakubu, just for housekeeping. Just for housekeeping, please, if you cannot show us any proof or document to authenticate some of the names of the persons you are attributing certain things to, please let us not assassinate their character. Let's speak to the issues. Go ahead, please.
Play back and put us on our tone. I just mentioned just now that in 2019, we exported members of this infantry division to Calabar and they were arrested at Akwa Ibom. You saw it, you have it in your archive. Check the pictures of those persons who left Edo rather than having a peaceful election in Edo, a general election. They were recruited, armed, and sent to Calabar. Who are they? Who led them? You have the convention with you. This same set of people are in Benin preparing for the 19th September election. But Edo people will resist them. We'll have a free, fair, and credible election, and His Excellency will win that election. And that is their fear.
Okay, let's speak. Let's try to speak specifically now to the recent violence that was said to have occurred in Agbede, because it's now APC said against PDP said. And let's try to get the facts right, because clearly we don't want a violent election in Edo and, of course, in Ondo State. So on one hand, the APC is saying that. Is there proof as to the violence that you said occurred in Agbede?
The proof we have, which you have yourself, is that a few months or a few weeks ago, the head of the Lions and Tiger introduced themselves to the candidate of APC in his house. And when they were so introduced, nobody from APC debunked that video that came out. And they were told what to do on election day.
I am asking you for a proof, but you say I have the proof. I don't quite understand. I asked you for the proof to this past violence I said occurred, and you said, I don't have any proof, really. But what proof do you have about this particular one in Agbede?
What we will do, Chamberlain, is to send the video of the visit of the Lions and the Tigers to you so that you can play it to the general public. And when they visited, after introducing themselves as lions and tigers, they were instructed on what to do on election day, on how to act as lions and tigers, not within their voting unit alone, but to go beyond the voting unit to their ward and even to the LGA. So if you have a video like that and nobody have come to deny it, what do you expect from the lions and tigers? 1 week after they struck at the Abba Palace, when the governorship
Mr.
candidate of
Yakubu,
PDP
we'll have to wait for your proof, as you have said. But for now, there is clearly no proof from our own end. But let's take this back to Mr. Ogwege. Now, this back and forth about violence in Edo is definitely giving everyone serious concern, to the point that the IG has said that everyone should sheath their swords, that the police should go out and do the needful that they need to do so that there is no violence in Edo. Both parties, your party and the PDP, are accusing each other of arming thugs. What will the IGP find with the APC if he comes to your party to say, bring your arms?
First of all, let me quickly register my disappointment with the choice of words of Mr. John Yakubu, who has risen to the point that he was the PDP deputy gubernatorial candidate in the 2016 election. To use stupid and nonsensical on national television, I think is very disappointing. There's nothing to learn from that. But to quickly speak to what you just asked, the IGP will meet that the APC is ready for the election. As we speak, we have been campaigning in every ward in Edo North. Tomorrow, we will start with the wards again in Edo South and move to Edo Central. We are speaking to the issues. Our candidate is canvassing the document, the simple agenda document that he believes will move Edo State forward. They don't have anything to campaign with, and that's the reason why they are trying to beguile the public by saying that the APC is preparing for thuggery. Of course, we don't have thugs in our midst. The thugs that used to be in the APC when Pastor Zayamu came, as a man of peace and as a man that believes in politics without bitterness, he has been able to rehabilitate them. He has been able to talk with them. If they were thugs before in 2016, of course, Godwin Obaseki used them to rig the elections in 2016. But today, they're in APC. They have been rehabilitated. They have been changed.
Mr. Ogbege, you have just indicted yourself when you say that. Mr. Ogbege, just one moment. You've just indicted yourself because Governor Obaseki was on your party platform in the last election and not now. So for you to be saying that he had thugs at that time, it means you gave him support.
Yes. Because he was the one contesting at that time. The party will take on the character and personality.
Supported the fact that your candidate, just one moment, you supported the fact that your party candidate at the time had thugs that he worked with.
We were not in the party at that time, we came. And what we did was to try and change the narrative in the APC. We don't believe in thuggery, we don't believe in violence. We believe in talking to Edo people. We want to serve Edo people, and we have a document called a simple agenda that Edo people have come to accept as the plan to take Edo, to put Edo on the path of glory, of growth.
But Mr. Ogwege, I don't know what you will say to Mr. Yakubu now. Just one moment. He's also said repeatedly that your party is recruiting and arming thugs. What do you say to that?
That's not true. The PDP, because they've been out of power for so many years, 12 years now, they are very desperate to get back to power. And that was the reason why they gave their tickets to Godwin Obaseki and his deputy to run their ticket. As we speak, the people that left, the renegades that left the APC for the PDP are the ones that dominate the PDP platform. They seized the machinery of the PDP, and all the others are just working for them. But they want to get back to power by every means, and they now rely on propaganda and disinformation. He mentioned just now, he said two things. He said the thugs were exported from Edo State to Akwa Ibom State. Then later he said the thugs were exported to Calabar. Calabar is not Akwa Ibom State. They are just crushing as straws. They don't have anything to campaign with. They've not been able to speak to Edo people what Godwin Obaseki achieved in the last 4 years. You recall that this same Joe Yakubu was on air several times to criticize Godwin Obaseki. But in June, when he moved to their party, they start praising him. So that is the height of desperation. Ask Joe Yakubu, he's speaking with you right now. He was deputy governorship candidate to Pastor Saji Izeyamu in 2016. Did Izeyamu resort to talk in 2016? So if he did not resort to Togri in 2016, will he resort to Togri now? Of course, no. So it's just desperation on their part.
Fair now to bring in Mr. Yakubu, but just so you know, I know for you it might be political gunshots in court, the terms about, the governor rigging elections, but please be mindful of the claims that are made. And I recall the deputy governor of Edo State talking about that coalition officer, that he wasn't involved in any violence with him. But Mr. Yakubu, now you've listened to Mr. Ogbege. What do you have to say, especially because you worked with now candidate of the APC during the previous elections?
Well, let me that Ogbede is missing up the whole thing. At a point, he has agreed that those talks belong to APC and they are trying to rehabilitate them. I don't know to which extent they have rehabilitated them or whether they're taking the gun from them. He cleared that. I'm not the one saying that. He said that those talks are APC talks, but because they are with them, they are trying. To which extent are they trying? We don't know. I know that they are not doing anything. Rather, they are rearming them because they are part and parcel of APC. The second thing is what he just said, that yes, I contested and I criticized Obaseki and all that. For record purposes, please go back to check. During our campaign, I was not only visible, I was very vocal. We did not, and I did not speak against Obaseki because at that point, we knew his capacity to drive the process of making Edo State great. 4 years after, you can also go back to your archive, whether at any point in time, whether John Hibatola Yakubu was on air criticizing Obaseki. And let me tell you this, because they have lost out. Go and watch the 2 years anniversary of His Excellency Godwin Obaseki. The former chairman was there. Check your record, you have it there. They praised him to high heaven. And he said two things, and I'll quote, the resources are low and the expectations are high. But the man is performing miracle. The words of Adams Oshomole. What they do
but
2 years, a year after before they started
Mr. Yakubu,
him.
I mean, here you are accusing Mr. Shomole of saying one thing, but you just said now that Mr. Ezeyamo had capacity then to do all of these things. So what happened? Did the capacity suddenly disappear from Mr. Ezeyamo right now?
No, I didn't say Ezeyamo capacity. I said we didn't speak against Obaseki during the campaign. And I repeated, I was not only visible but vocal. We didn't speak against Obaseki in 2016.
Yeah, but while you were the deputy governorship candidate of Mr. Ezeyamo, can you just hang on? Just hang on a moment. While you were the deputy governorship candidate of Ezeyamo at the time, he had capacity. You believed in him. That's why you had a joint ticket. So all of those promises now, has it suddenly fizzled out?
Just listen, Chamberlain. What I said was that during that campaign...
just respond to that question.
No, that's what I'm saying now. We did not campaign against Obaseki. Rather, we saw Oshomole try to have a third tenure. That was our campaign point. That was how I said we did not question the capacity or the ability of Obaseki to drive the process. What we saw, what we believe was that Oshomole was coming to take a third tenure. Unfortunately for us, we lost. But fortunately for Edo people, they won. And because Edo people won, Obaseki decided to drive the process of making Edo State great again. That is the anger of the APC member. So when you see a process and the man deviated from what Oshomole and his EPM wanted and started driving the process of developing Edo State, that is the problem. That was why I said 2 years into his administration, Oshomole praised him to high heaven. So go back to archive and
let's bring in Mr. Ogbege before we close. All right, just a minute. Could you go ahead and give us your closing thoughts quickly, please, Mr. Ogbege?
Yes, thank you very much. He's talking about Obaseki performing, but I remember Chief Dan Obi, the immediate past chairman of the PDP, November last year, in the 3rd year anniversary of Godi Obaseki, criticized Godi Obaseki that he failed woefully and that his roles were poor roles and that he was diverting funds. And of course, if you also remember, you will see that this resort to political violence started with Godi Obaseki demanding his second term ambition with a menace and saying that Dan Oshomole cannot come into Edo State. For a governor of a state to say that somebody will not, a citizen of a state will not come into the state. I mean, that is preposterous. Then he also Even his deputy, has been known for violence. So I think it is that time we begin to look at the situation more critically and to analyze who have always resorted to violence. Each time
And
he
Mr.
is
Dan
with
Nugbegia,
his supporters,
APC
he
chieftain,
always...
thank you very much indeed for talking to us this morning, as well as Mr. John Yakubu, who is the chairman, Esan North Campaign Council of the PDP. Thank you for your time as well today. We will be back in just a moment, everyone. Don't go away.
We receive reliable and credible information on a secret meeting between Mr. Mike Igini, INEC Resident Electoral Commissioner in Akwa Ibom State, and Mr. Godwin Obaseki. Around 3 a.m., Mr. Mike Igini was seen driving to the private residence of Governor Godwin Obaseki in the company of two other known allies of the governor, one of whom was identified as Mr. Aslem Ojezwa. At the meeting, Mr. Igini, Governor Godwin Obaseki, and other top PDP allies design and examine ways and strategies to rig the outcome of the September 19 governorship election, with an exclusive focus on the production of fake ballots and the inducement of recruited INEC adult staff to aid the success of the rigging plans. Mr. Mike Igini and other associates of the governor left the meeting held in the governor's private residence with sacks of money, which undoubtedly was illegally sourced from the state treasury as bribes for their cooperation and participation in the criminal attempts and plans to subvert and undermine the will of the people. Already, before the meeting, we have it in good authority. We have received numerous information back with proof on Mr. Mike Igini's illegal conscription of youth corps members who will be playing vital role in the conduct of the election as ad hoc staff. Some of the corps members have volunteered information on how they were contacted by Mr. Mike Igini and offered deals to help the PDP at the polls in exchange for cash benefits. We have also obtained pictures of Mr. Mike Igini at Protea Hotel, where visiting national commissioners were lodged, apparently running the errands of Godwin Obaseki and the PDP. He was overheard at the hotel discussing the Edo governorship election and the recruitment of ad hoc staff. We dare Mr. Mike Igini to deny his presence at this hotel, and we shall immediately supply pictorial evidence to the press and members of the public.
Myself, one of our friends, who's also a friend to my friend, and another lawyer, that guy from Osun State, we traveled together with my police orderly to Delta State. We spent almost 7 hours getting to Benin. And given the challenge of security, we said, look, see, the event is tomorrow. It's church in the morning. We have to go early. So we stayed in my uncle's house in the morning, very early, because the church program is going to start by 10 o'clock. We set up and went through the Protea Hotel to have breakfast. And went straight. When we were on our back from the event, we also came to have dinner there. It was there I saw Kazima Febua, who was been a friend. So when I say I will not greet somebody because it's a PDP or APC, no. As well as Senator Al-Mikena, I met them. And we were going, they entered their vehicle, we were going somewhere, and I went to go and sleep. And by Wednesday, early in the morning, we left Benin. Since Wednesday. So how could somebody who had been in Lagos Wednesday, Thursday, Friday be said to be in Governor Baseki's home by 3 o'clock with Aslem and Jeswa and two other unnamed persons or other unnamed persons that I was driving? I didn't drive the vehicle that we took But the judge told them, heal us. Not the way, can you heal us? How could I be in Lagos, where you are meeting now, and at the same time be in Benin? That is not true. Sacks of bags of absolute nonsense. So everything they have said is not true.
Mr. Matthias Emeribe joins us next. He's a legal practitioner. Good morning and thank you for joining us today. While listening to those comments, what do you think is going on here?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. I want to believe that because at the moment the stakes are high, it is not unexpected that there will be a lot of front and back in terms of campaign for purposes of trying to curry support one way or the other. And it's unfortunate that we need to bring down our very best for purposes of selling the product that we have. And why do I say this? I would be the last to want to believe that somebody like Mr. Mike Igini, one of those that have, in fact, distinguished himself in the commission. And in fact, for me, I see him as a symbol of the credibility that is remaining in INEC. Himself and the electoral commissioner of Sokoto State, I think somebody, Sadiq, So these two, for me, are people that have shown that it is possible to have a good election in Nigeria. Therefore, when such allegations, so weighty allegations are made, I want to think that with due respect that Mr. Mike himself will not allow it to lie low, so to say, because these are very damaging allegations that have been made by a party. And I wouldn't know why it is just simply the APC. Meanwhile, we have other political parties that are equally in this contest. So for them, if probably they have, and that is a fact, they felt that they have, it is my humble opinion and view that, of course, let them have opportunity of presenting same before, because to say you are challenging him to come and debunk, of course, I listened to him equally, and it was clear from the statement he made that there was no place, it was no place close to where the allegations were made.
Mr. Meribe, that may be what you know of him, but as a lawyer, I thought that sometimes, when cases like this come up, you may want to sit back and look at the issues that have been tabled and perhaps, begin to dissect them one after the other. But if you then say, I know Mr. B to be of this, doesn't that give the impression that you may not be favorably disposed to examining what Mr. A might have said of Mr. B, albeit from a distance?
Now, let me say something here, because my position is premised upon the knowledge that I have, or I have already seen concerning the man Mike Igini, from the time he was appointed as the resident electoral commissioner from Cross River State up to Akwa Ibom State. In fact, he has been to 6 states. And in all the 6 states he has gone to, he has distinguished himself. So I wouldn't know why Edo. In fact, he has even been in Edo, where the same APC and PDP in 2015 were among those, when he was doing the send-off, were among those who praised him to the highest heavens. So for them to come up now to say this same person, because in all areas where there are problems, he has gone there to solve the problem. And in most cases, you discover that his action has been tailored towards giving the people their vote and not to take their vote away from them. And what do I mean here? Let me start the 2011 election. In 2011, in Cross River, a particular CPC was no party, it's a party which of course the current president belonged to them. But he won a seat somewhere in Bogbogri in Cross River. ACN equally won a state house assembly, which was not even known then. That was in 2011. In the Imo State, in the same 2011, under the Hakim issue, Mike Igini was the one that was called back to come and correct because there was a contest then. Is it in Anambra State where you have the senatorial problem? Of course, Peter Obi and Ume then, we are the people who, because PDP won. Now, what am I trying to say? In all of these areas that Mike Igini had gone to, he has disgraced himself. And to that extent, even at that, foreign countries have even recognized him, talking about the US. Is it in Ghana? But, is it in Zimbabwe? Is it in Malawi?
The thing about this is that they know the implication of those comments that they have made. Yes. And now, the other man there say, look, we have pictures to show certain things. So aren't you supposed to be asking, okay, listen, if they say they have pictures and they challenge him to prove or deny, and then they will publish pictures. Yeah. Now, aren't you supposed to interrogate and say, wait a minute, okay, what pictures do they have? Publish those pictures first and let's see what it's about.
My happiness is that this program showed the two sides. Mike Igini mentioned the issue of being at Protea Hotel. And there, that was on his way back from the burial he attended. And there he saw two APC chieftains. So it may not be, one may not be wrong to say that these APC two chieftains may have taken picture of Mike Igini. So if that is done, would we now come to the conclusion that the picture itself has already confirmed what they are saying?
No, but you're going to the conclusion already that that's what the picture will show. So we don't know what the picture will show.
Yes, I'm only telling you that the picture, he has already told you that he met Afebua, he met the other senator, and both of them are APC chieftains. So is it impossible that if those pictures are shown, does it now prove conclusively of the allegation that was raised?
We don't know what the pictures will show, so we can't say what they will prove or what they will not prove until we see the pictures.
I thought probably what we'll be talking about here is the issue of the video, not even the picture, they say. Because picture itself can be doctored. Or let's even leave out the issue of doctoring of picture. But the fact that he said pictorial evidence, my argument is that the fact that Igini himself had admitted that he met on his way. Why is it that it wasn't the PDP that was raising it? I was even thinking that it's even the PDP or the other party that will be raising it, that he met with APC people.
Will pictorial evidence be inadmissible in court?
Will what?
Pictorial evidence, will they be inadmissible?
There's nothing that cannot be admitted, depending on the circumstance.
So why do you say you want a video instead of a picture? We don't know
what I'm saying is that pictorial evidence would require further proof that you have a picture of somebody with another. It's not enough. If there's nothing to support it in terms of what? The evidence that is linked to the issue that is on ground. Because, you cannot bring a picture that happened some 20 years ago, and you are now bringing it to deal with an issue that is happening today. And you say two of them agree.
It looks like you know the picture that they're about to release.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that since Mike Igini has already admitted here that he met on his way back to Lagos two APC chieftains who are his friends.
No,
and he cannot say because of the fact that the election, he will see his friends. I will say, no, let me stay away from these people.
But do you expect him to admit that what they said was actually true?
Expect what?
Do you expect him to admit on tape that what they said was true?
My forceful position concerning Mike Igini is because of his track record. And that is one of the things that we are concerned about here. We must not crucify our own because we want to make a statement of an election.
Do you think his track record would be admissible in court?
Yes, it has a lot to play in somebody's character.
Now,
because what we are dealing with here is character. So all you need to do, show evidence of your character. It has a lot to show about your personality.
All right.
Yes.
In that light, Mr. Mike Igini is not the resident electoral commissioner in Edo. He's in Akwa Ibom. What do you think is the origin or reason for all this accusation against him?
Yes. For me, I think, like I said, desperation has set in. That's simply my position. And because desperation has set in, anything... Come again?
Some listening to you right now will say you're already taking sides.
With due respect, if they want to take it that way, that is their own position. After all, for me to say I'm defending Mike Igini is because, like I said, from past, he has demonstrated that he meant well for this country by the elections that he has, presided over. So, on what basis would I now begin to be among those who want to pull down our own? We know the recent elections that we've been having, the kind of comment that have been coming left, right, and center, so to say, in terms of national and local, international and local, and you now have somebody who stands as an ambassador In other words, his actions and the way he has been conducting himself has brought about the laundering of the image of the nation. In other words, has cleaned up all of those things, putting doubt in the minds of international communities. That is it true that these people cannot conduct a free and fair election? And we are now bringing that person locally within ourselves, want to bring him down, with due respect. For somebody like me, I'll be among those who say, no, I disagree with that. If they say they have that, let them show us that. We challenge them. Let them bring the evidence in question to show that indeed Mike Igini in question has compromised. They mentioned the issue of collecting cash. I mean, those are not allegations that anybody can just pick from anywhere. That you said there were loss of cash. You mentioned it. You talked of fake ballot papers. They mentioned it. You talked of recruiting what they call NYC ad hoc whatever stuff. Those are not mere allegations. Those are facts. So we expect that you cannot just come on national telly and make them without bringing evidence to show that these things exist.
If those are facts,
yes,
and of course the accusation has been made and Mr. Mike Igini has also refuted them, yes, do you see, with the gravity of those issues, do you see him going to court?
Well, for me, with all due respect, that is the only place for him to clean his name. There's no other option, except they retract it. And I would expect that before this kind of statement was made, perhaps, I wouldn't know, there would have been a consultation between the local palace and the national. In other words, what I mean here is that the chairman of the party here that made the allegation would have ought to have consulted with the national to say, is this thing good for us to put it out? What part is this one going to play for us? Is it going to enhance us or bring us down? What is it going to show about our party, as it were?
You know, the thing about this is, knowing Nigerian politics, the way it turns out, the way it plays, is that you seem to be, have this completely belief that whatever it is that they have is completely wrong. But what about the benefit of the doubt, to the extent that, look, could it also be that, well, maybe while Mr. Igini was on his way to the burial ceremony, which he spoke about, and stopped over to see his friends, that maybe some persons may have seen him somewhere and then misinterpreted some of those actions, hence that is why. So we thought you were going to allude or perhaps raise this as a possible scenario, but from your submissions, you don't even think that there's a chance that could happen.
With the greatest respect, my problem here is that the allegation that was made by the party was concrete. It was an absolute allegation. It was not even a conditional one. It was an absolute allegation.
But an absolute allegation can also be predicated on the wrong premise. It's possible.
It doesn't matter. What I'm simply trying to say, whether it was premised on, they are not giving the impression that it has a wrong premise for it to have been given. They are telling you that this is correct.
You don't know.
They are telling us that this is correct. This is exactly what they saw.
That is their view, but you don't know the condition preceding that concrete or whatever the adjective used in describing their view.
Excuse me. Let me tell you. What I'm saying is this. Whatever condition that may have existed in making them to reach this conclusion, I am saying with the greatest respect that they are sure of the allegation they are making. In other words, they are telling you that anywhere, anytime, any day, they can defend it. But I'm saying here that as far as I'm concerned, concerning the man, Mike Igini, whom, like I said, that I mentioned when I started here, there are 2 electoral commissioners in Nigeria today that when you see their track record, you have hope that tomorrow will be better than today, as it were. In fact, we have hope that tomorrow will be better. Who are these people? Mike Igini and Sadiq, the electoral commissioner in Sokoto State.
I imagine other reps wondering, well, we're trying our best also, but, these are weighty allegations, really, from, the camp of the APC. And you wonder, these kinds of allegations, what process should they follow? Should they be something that you put out there or you lodge it with the appropriate authorities? That's on one hand. And then from Mr. Igini also, what should be the response, really? I know we've talked about litigation. Shouldn't that be the way for both parties rather than have, this sort of back and forth, really?
Let me simply tell you, my reading concerning what you have from the allegation that was made is simply that, look, we would, like I said, if we go by the track record of Igini, wherever he presides, it's difficult for rigging to take place. Therefore, if we have such a person presiding over our own affair here, it may be impossible for one or two things we probably will have to do to happen. Therefore, the best way is for us to preempt the authorities from saying, please, don't allow this person or people like this to come here, as it were. Indirectly. I may be wrong, but this is my own summation, and that is what I want to think that very many people will think as well.
Right, so whose responsibility is it to sort of investigate this? Because as it stands right now, it's still you say, I say. Who is meant to investigate this such that people will come up with the conclusion that this is actually what happened?
No, listen. It has been put out there by the party. That is by the APC. APC had put it out there, so to speak. Now, I want to believe that they would have gone a notch further by presenting it to the appropriate authority to investigate whether it is true or not. Particularly in the area concerning bribery, that is money. The area concerning printing of fake ballot papers. The area of printing, because at the last count, I know that Mr. Mike Igini is the resident electoral commissioner for Akwa Ibom. I don't know him to be the resident electoral commissioner, the REC of Edo State. So if they are saying, for instance, the issue of recruiting of INEC staff and ballot paper, then you begin to ask questions. Is it that Mike Igini, or is there anything to show that Mike Igini has already been drafted to Edo State? I wouldn't know, so to speak.
Because you didn't ask some of these questions initially, because when they say that he met with some core members and core members have told them certain things, you would have thought, wait a minute, because after all, you have received briefs from clients. You've gone to court based on the briefs you received from clients. Some you won, some you lost. And some perhaps you may have lost because eventually you find out that, why didn't you disclose this information to me in the first instance? Yeah. And you give them benefit of the doubt. But in this case, you didn't seem to think that there just might be something that we don't know or that you don't know yet. But yet, you're very categorical.
Yes, I'm very categorical because, one, the statement that was put out there were mere statements. The evidence didn't follow suit. I was thinking that maybe in the course of... Yes, okay. I was thinking that in the course of them making that press statement, they will probably have a video to show that, I know what I'm telling you. They have a video to show that this is what is going on.
They won't lay... He said they challenged him, deny, then we will bring out
No, but he has denied. He has denied. He has denied. Even the day, because first of he has they mentioned that this thing happened on the 27th of what? Of August. And on that same 27th of August, he has said that he was not in Benin, he was in Lagos. So could he have been in two places at the same time? It's like the shadow of Mike Igini is creating ripples.
Well, we're not a judge in this matter. So both arguments or whatever it is that they have, perhaps if Mr. Igini decides to go to court, because those are very serious
I want to think that
issues.
He will not wait. All he needs to do first, he will write them a letter first. Let them, because for you to take out an action in libel or defamation, you do a letter first. So they will do a letter, I guess, to them. Let them admit or, if they still insist that this is, then the matter will be ventilated in court. And then the court be the one that will decide eventually.
Are you a counsel to him?
I need not be a counsel to him.
Because you were saying...
I need not.
You sounded very certain that certain actions will happen.
I'm telling you, because I'm a lawyer, I'm only giving you the procedure. You don't just go to court without, just like what the vice president did the other time. When there was an allegation made against him, a false allegation made against him, what did he do? He called his lawyers and they wrote a letter first. So the letter must be written and they to specify what those people who made that allegation should do. If they don't do it, then it gives him the opportunity or the right to now approach the judiciary.
Assuming, without conceding, that they actually have video, what becomes of your defense?
It doesn't matter. Whether they have video, the video... It
doesn't matter?
Yes, it doesn't matter because it must be proved beyond doubt that indeed what you are saying is correct. That you have video, you have picture, like I said, is not conclusive evidence. There must be a nexus. It must be connecting. They must agree.
All right, Mr. Matase Meribe, legal practitioner. Thank you for your thoughts this morning.
Thank you.
All right, then. So we'll take a look at some of your comments as well in just a moment. Guys, do we have anyone coming in? All right, we'll be back and take a look at some of them. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's see your response now. Chief Andy, we've got your tweet, and you say the CAMA 2020 Act is for all religious bodies or religious bodies in Nigeria. How come only the Christian community are the only one complaining about this section?
I mean, obviously that conversation is ongoing. You see this one, Badang Joshua says, our leaders seem to toy a lot with issues that are sensitive and sacred. Why will the commission be saddled with the responsibility to suspend and appoint trustees of the church? Our leaders should be careful the way laws are enacted in this country, he says.
Olagunju Oladele says, it is perfectly normal to give government the power to remove trustee boards of charities and replace them with interim management in the event of fraud and so on. However, special caution should be considered when overseeing the activities of religiously affiliated ones.
Well, and besides, two sides of the same coin. APC and PDP at those states are just two wrong options given to the innocent Edo masses.
Well, take a look at this one from Adeyomoye Oluseyi. Politics in Edo State is 90% violence. That's what he says. I pity innocent voters come September the 19th. There has never been a peaceful rally by both parties and accusations of recruiting thugs. And when you hear what the IGP says to causes a lot of concern.
Well, that would definitely be his own perception of whether or not there has been violence or no violence in the politicking. Imonoka says, politics ought to be a vehicle for the development of a people and her infrastructure. Both parties in Edo State have failed to unveil their economic roadmap on how to reflate state-ailing economy, create employment, enhance human capacity, and infrastructural development.
Okay, is that all right? There you go. That's it. We do thank you all for your comments. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Do have a wonderful day and kindly keep safe.